Tuesday, August 13th, 2024 at 5:30. This is the ACT Committee. And I am calling it to order. Our first item on the agenda is announcements. I don't believe we have any announcements, but we are trying a new format here, so this is going to be the order from now on. The second item on the agenda is comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Okay. Seeing none?
Can I say something?
Yes, absolutely.
Can we put a battery in that clock? Thank you.
Yep, thanks. I was looking at that too. So next on the agenda is reports. And seeing none, we will move on to our agenda item number 4, which is old business. This is business that we discussed in previous meetings and was sent back to this committee for additional discussion. The first item, 4A, is approved July 2024 meeting minutes, which we've read.
Approved.
There was one note on there that said the approval of the previous month's meeting minutes was 3-0. It was actually 2-0, so we would like that to be amended. Next item under old business is 4B, discussing forming a Westchester Borough Transportation Committee. This was discussed at length in the last committee meeting. Sheila and I discussed it. We opened for comment. I don't think we got much input from the general public on this one, but just to recap, Westchester's growing. In the next 10 years, we expect more than a 5% increase in population growth. And we are looking for methods, sustainable methods to move people around from in and outside of the borough into the borough. We put together a draft proposal, which we mostly agreed to, discussed this in council last month. Council kicked a couple questions back to the committee to answer. And so the first question was, Westchester University has a series of shuttles. There's 4 routes. Originally, when Westchester University proposed this shuttle, again, more like a circulator to move people around that do not have vehicles, it was originally proposed with the idea that residents could ride these buses as well. The question was, I asked the question to Julie Dietrich at Westchester University, who's in charge of external affairs, and she answered that question. The question was whether or not residents could ride on these buses, and the answer is no. The answer is basically no, based on liability, contracts, and safety were the 3 reasons we were given. So that was the first question we had, is whether or not Westchester University buses would be available to people that reside within the borough. The answer was no. The second question was, we have a rail restoration committee. We are proposing standing up a broader transportation committee, a advisory committee on multi-modes of transportation, not just rail, but also biking, walking, shuttles, potentially rail, basically multiple modes of transportation. The question was, what will happen with the Rail Restoration Committee? Will that committee be dissolved? What is the relationship between this new committee and the Rail Committee? And had some discussions with the Rail Restoration Committee. We came to some agreements that we believe that both committees do need to exist. They have different purposes. Rail Committee is very laser focused on bringing rail back, very narrow focus, while the Transportation Advisory Committee is very broad in general and may involve rail, but will probably not specialize in that area as the Rail Restoration Committee does. However, we did agree also between myself and I spoke with Jordan Norley, that we do need a liaison between both committees. So somebody should be at least in attendance. They don't have to be governing officers, but somebody that could be a liaison to be able to ensure that communication was flowing freely between both committees. And so that's where we landed. So that should answer both of the outstanding questions for proposing the new Transportation Advisory Committee. So I would recommend that we move this to discussion and we try to proceed and put this committee up and stand it up. Yeah.
I did meet with the university and they expressed much interest in being involved in this as well. In part because they know that they can't serve us with what you had discussed earlier, but they still want to serve us.
So just a clarification, we're going to move section 4, item B to discussion on the work session.
That's correct. That's what I'm proposing.
Okay.
Rio?
3-0 that we're going to form a transportation committee.
The transaction would be directing, when we get to the work session next week, we could, you would be directing the solicitor to draft an ordinance amendment, because just to create a committee, you have to pass an ordinance. And before you pass the ordinance, you have to review the language of the ordinance, and the solicitor will need some time to do that. And then we can post that for next month's act committee meeting, and then schedule a hearing at September's. We won't have the hearing in September, but we could have a motion to schedule the hearing at the September meeting for October. So that's how it would, that's the timing of it.
So in the work session, we would have an item to direct the solicitor, or would that happen at, okay, great. Okay, moving on to agenda number 5, new business, 5A. We have a motion to amend open records requests policy.
Sure, and my apologies, the right to know red line doc is a different doc here on your attachments on the website, but I think the memo from the solicitor really stands on its own. And it mentions 2 things that happen in our right to know request, and we strongly suggest council consider amending its policy to cut down on superfluous requests. Essentially, that's Act 65. So that's on the screen right now. That has to do with the next agenda item. What we want to see is agenda item Roman numeral 5A, memo right to know policy. That's the memorandum from Kristen Camp to myself, which has been posted online here.
Basically stating that anonymous or verbal requests will not be processed. That's the main.
Yeah, what's happening is our bots, our robots or algorithms are submitting right to know requests. They're scraping our website. They're finding the right to know inbox, and they're creating a standardized form and sending it off to us for information. And we've been getting a lot more of these. So we still want to provide information. Let's be clear. But it has to be provided to an individual who's requesting it on our forms, not by a robot.
Any issues with that?
I have no issues with making that amendment.
Great. I really appreciate that. That's going to lighten some of the load here that my colleague to my right has to handle on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Appreciates it very much.
Yeah, okay. All right, so moving on to 5B, discuss amendments to rules and procedures of Borough Council.
Yeah, and We did have Act 65 up, and we do have the existing, as far as I know, the existing rules and procedure of Borough Council, which spell out things that aren't spelled out in the administrative code. You can't have any rules and procedures of council that run contrary to law. But these spell out certain specific things that might be unique to the way Westchester makes its agendas, the way it conducts its business, the length of time for public comment. That was an issue that came up this week. People were confused. Should it be 5 minutes? Should it be 3 minutes? Some of our agendas say 5. Council President has requested it be 3 for next week's hearing. So really, that could clarify some of our rules and procedures. And what we really need to do here is update it so it's in conformance with Act 65, which governs the circumstances under which you can and cannot amend an agenda prior to a meeting or at a meeting. You can't amend an agenda at a meeting and have a matter of financial interest voted on. And if you think about it just in common sense terms, that makes total sense. You don't want legislative bodies introducing things that spend money without the people in the public having forewarning about what you're going to be doing. So at the very least, we should look at this document, amend it so it's comports and it's aligns with Act 65. And if you want to review it and make any other changes, like I suggested, like with a public comment time limit, now would be the time to do that. So we could just, tackle this once.
Is there a problem if we write in here that we want our public comment to be limited to 3 minutes and then we let a year's worth of people go through and ramble on for 10 minutes? Are we somehow causing something that would be unenforceable or?
Wouldn't be in any legal jeopardy, but just for sake of consistency, you'd like to be consistent in the amount of and I do not recommend you have a buzzer and then cut off the microphone the instant you get to 180 seconds, like let the person finish what they're saying. But the idea is to keep it short and to the point.
One item I wanted to bring to council's attention and to you, Sean, is the ability for any one council member to essentially table something to go to, out of work session and discuss at voting session. I know that's currently in our borough code, or in our rules, but to me, I look at it as that should be voted on as almost like a tabled motion according to Robert's Rules of Order, where you would need a second and then there would be an up and down vote of all of council. Because essentially, and one more thing, essentially any one council member could say, hey, I want this to be on discussion, and could go through all 30 items, which would not be good for democracy. And just one person can hold up an entire meeting. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, or the public's thoughts, but I just think it should be more democratic.
So just to reiterate what you're saying, Mr. McGinnis, is if somebody wants to move an agenda item to discussion, it has to take a vote, there has to be a motion, a second, discussion, take it to vote before that happens, or just.
I think that would be correct, and because that would be different than tabling a motion, in which case there just has to be a second, no discussion, up or down vote. But to move something from one agenda into another agenda discussion for another day, I believe should have the entire will and voted on of the council.
I think the only conflict that I'm thinking, just kind of live reacting to it, is we can table a motion which seems more severe than moving it to discussion. So we could take something off and table it and not talk about it versus, I mean, I'm just trying to sort it out in my head whether or not that would be.
Well, either
or
way,
we would do
but
both.
either way, you would still need a vote.
Correct.
In my work session, basically as a vote taking. What's happening at the work session is you sort for action following night into two categories. Things you all agree on, no. Things you all agree on, consent items that don't really need debate following night. So that's the I remind everyone on the council that it's the votes that matter. So in the case that only one person wanted to discuss everything and everyone else was in favor, there would be 10-6-1 votes taken. So, but I hear your concern and point, and want to do it differently. It's amending the rules and procedures would be the way to do it, and then get consensus among.
Mr. Metric, some of the rules and procedures this is a dated document, what's the 1994, is that what?
Lots of great things happened in 1994.
Okay, yeah, they did.
Graduated St. Agnes in 1994. How do you like that?
So it's time to look at it anyway and to update it with current language that's coming from the General Assembly. And so who should be responsible for updating this?
Well, the committee can, if it wants to chew on this another month, we can table it, come back next month with some recommended changes out of the discussion I'm hearing tonight before you take it to council, so you can take a more complete document to council. That might be a good move. At the very least, we need to amend these rules and procedures so that we're aligned with Act 65. Don't worry, just because the rules say an agenda can be amended a certain way, Act 65 prevails, because you can't make any rules or procedures that are not aligned with statutes. So if anyone tried to do that at the meeting, we'd have to correct them and say, no, no, no. Even though our rules and procedures says that's how you amend the agenda, you can't because of Act 65. In the meantime, so you have covered in the meantime.
Okay, I think we'll just keep this in committee for another month and. Any public comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, the next item is other business.
I just have one item. A couple constituents of mine received notification that they couldn't park on their streets on South Church, as well as Dean Street. It was later found out that the reason why they couldn't park there, it's regarding a tree that was taken down. The only thing I ask, and maybe because we're on the communications committee, is that if there's any way moving forward that maybe the borough sends a letter to residents that are going to be impacted by any type of construction or trees getting taken down, paving, things of that nature, so that they're going to be well aware of that. I don't know if it's a letter or if it's another type of communication, but I think that would help people at least plan their days moving forward. That's all.
I'm
Really,
very much in favor of doing that. The trees go down. We can figure it out usually that that's what's happening, but it is very disruptive to the streets when that is happening. So
Just so I understand, you're talking about when temporary no parking signs appear all
Correct.
of a sudden. So a little bit of forewarning about that or something. Okay, that's a process handled by a parking department. Yeah, okay, so now I understand.
Okay.
what is our current process when we put the signs up?
We don't have a good notification process. If it's a borough sanctioned public works event. Typically, I believe Kathy will put it on the website. I think Nick does an alert. And then I believe for most of them, especially like Pico or something like that, they get hand-delivered letters to anyone affected. For the smaller postings that won't affect a huge area, we don't typically notify people, but we have, like with the minor and High Street construction, we did try to email any permit holders to let them know, you know, you're not going to have parking here, so here are the places that you can park. But if it's not in a permitted area, we won't have a database for the residents parking.
Well,
Postings are requested, we require for large construction, I believe it's 72 hours ahead of time so that we can post it 24 hours ahead of time.
The no parking, I think the no parking is going up just fine. It's the fact that it's going to be a tree removal is different. I think that the no parking notification is working. It's that there's going to be a gigantic crane blocking the whole street, and you know, that it's a different thing than.
Correct.
It's on Sharpless Street, we just had a tree come down and be taken down, not come down. And it didn't really interrupt too much. There were no parking signs that went up and everybody was okay. But most of us have some other place to park. And, you know, okay, so we can't park in that little area for that little bit of time. But today, there was a gigantic crane blocking the whole street. There were trucks all, like you weren't allowed anywhere near those houses, basically. It was dangerous to walk down the sidewalk, which is, you just avoid it, but it would be nice to notify the neighbors that that's happening. Somehow.
I hear your concerns, and I think Ramsey and I have to talk about how that would fit into the posting process. I think that's where it belongs, because with the big capital projects like paving and utility work, we either handle that proactively or our third-party partners do.
It's almost like, does the tree commission have to do it? I don't think they should. I'm just saying like that, if Aqua were doing it, Aqua would be more involved. So I think that the borough has to take this, but it's.
okay. Any other business?
You know, in the spirit of answering questions brought up in meetings, we'll take this, we'll talk about it, and if it's okay with this committee, can we bring it up in parking next month? What we can do about this?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Most of these instances are going to be public works related, so I don't know. I'm happy to manage it in parking, but we should get buy-in.
I kind of think that it's Public Works too. The notices going out by parking are functioning. That's fine. This is another level. Although I think that in the end, parking is probably going to be the one doing it. So I don't know if that.
A contact database for people parking in the borough and contact that way if we don't have another way to create some sort of communicative database to the residents. Because I think that as much as it's helpful to be able, as much as it's helpful to be able to access this online, a lot of people aren't forward, they're not proactively searching for these things unless they're affected. So if there's a way we can send out a Ready Chesco alert and people can say, I want every road closure alert, maybe that's the easiest way. If not, maybe we have a secondary option with the parking software, but don't quote me on that. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Any public comment on this item regarding temporary no parking? Okay, any other business? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 5:55.